Good afternoon and welcome to a remote meeting of the Statutory Licence Subcommittee taking place on Tuesday, the 19th of January 2021, which has been recorded live to the Council's website and will be available to be viewed for a minimum of 6 months. I'm Councillor Linda Marshall. I'll be chairing today's meeting and I'm joined by Councillors Carol Hampson, Amanda Hopgood, Leanne Kennedy and Marion Wilson. If my connection is lost, Carol Hampson will take over until my connection is restored. Before I commence with the formal business on the agenda, I'd like to cover some housekeeping issues for us all to follow. First of all, could we all keep our microphones mute unless you wish to speak? If you do wish to speak, please use the chat function on the right-hand side and type RTS, right to speak, into the chat function. Remember, everyone in the meeting can see these messages. When you're invited to speak by me, remember to unmute your microphone. And once invited to speak, please introduce yourself with your name and position, unless you've already introduced yourself earlier in the meeting. If you're having issues with connectivity, try switching off your video and use just the telephone function. If connectivity issues do continue, you may have to leave the meeting and rejoin to get a better signal. So moving on to the agenda now. So Jill, apologies for absence.
Chair, we have no apologies for absence.
Okay, have we any substitutes?
No substitute members, Chair.
Members, have we any declarations of interest?
No,
okay, I'm getting shakes. No. So now we're on to item 4. It's an application to vary a premises licence to specify an individual as a designated premises supervisor in respect of the King's Head, 176 Newgate Street, Bishop Auckland. I'd like to welcome the parties to the hearing. Mr. Jason Moran, did Jason join us?
Yes, I'm here. Yes, thank you, Councillor.
Okay, welcome to the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Moran. And he's of Punch Taverns. We've got Mr. Christian Burns, the proposed DPS, and there's the solicitor, Mr. Piers Warren. We have Sergeant Caroline Dickinson and PC Ian Robinson of Down Constabulary. We're also joined by the licensing team leader, Helen Johnson, committee services officers, Jill Errington and Paula Nicholson, and the legal advisor to the subcommittee today is Stephen Buston. Please note that all 5 members will sit during the hearing today. Only 3 will make a decision. I'm going to ask Stephen, the solicitor, now to explain why we do this and to run through the procedure.
Thank you very much, Chair. Afternoon, everyone. Yes, as our Chair's just said there, we have 5 councillors online today, but just to make it clear that only 3 will make the deliberations at the end of the hearing. That number is prescribed by law. We have 2 extra councillors here who just sit in case there are any issues during the hearing, such as a member's fee dropping or illness, or if a conflict of interest suddenly arises through the evidence that's heard. At the end of the hearing, I've already asked the Chair to tell us who the 3 councillors are that will make the decision. I just thought it was important to explain, because you have 5 councillors obviously on viewing here, but the deliberations will be made by 3 and the decision will be made by 3. So that's the first matter just to address. With regards to the actual hearing, obviously our councillors are quite experienced now. They know the order of play. For everyone else's benefit, you'll be aware that you face a determination today on a request to appoint a designated premises supervisor at the King's Head pub in Bishop Auckland. You'll have all had a chance to read the extensive written representations. Each party now has an opportunity to make oral representations in support. You're going to hear from the licensing team leader and you'll all have a chance to question her. You'll hear from the police and from the applicant and you'll all have a chance to question them. Once the representations have been made and all questions asked, the parties will be asked to sum up and we'll ask the licensing officer, the police and the applicant to do it in that order. After that, the subcommittee will retire to deliberate the decision in private. All parties will be notified by telephone or email, and obviously following that you'll receive a formal written decision notice outlining the reasons. That has to be within the statutory time frame of 5 working days. I'm going to let the parties have the say, Chair, but one point I must make clear before we begin: the guidance is quite clear. The licensing authority considering the matter must restrict its considerations to the issue of crime and disorder and give comprehensive reasons for its decision. I would suggest we hear an outline of the report from the licensing team lead, Chair, but I understand that the applicant may have a couple of preliminary points he may wish to raise. Now, it might make sense to deal with them first if he wants to indicate whether that's what he wants to do.
Okay, Mr. Warren, are you wanting to address the committee now, or?
Thank you. It might make sense for me to do so very, very quickly, if that's okay. Firstly, there was CCTV evidence submitted, which I understand from a conversation with your licensing officer will be heard in or viewed in private session away from the public, which we've asked for because there are GDPR issues, etc. about it. So hopefully that's all been agreed, but I just wanted to double check first on that point.
Wes, when the time comes, Mr. Warren, we'll ask the committee to make a resolution for that matter to be heard. That part of the hearing to be heard in private. Thank you.
Perfect. And the only other point I wanted to raise, Councillor, was really just a point of clarification. I raised this with PC Robinson earlier on the representation. As you may be aware, representations to changes to DPS can only be made by a senior police officer, and there's no statement to verify that on the statement of the police. Now, I'm not intending to make a point about this, or ask that we adjourn it and get statements or anything like that. I thought it would simply be useful so that we're complying with the regulations for the police, just simply to confirm that they were acting on behalf of the senior police officer, so that it complies with the regulations. I thought if you're happy with that, that would be a fair way to deal with this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warren. So, police, have we anything to say to the committee on this issue?
Hello, Chair. It's PC Robertson here. Yeah, just to confirm, I'm a licensing officer for Durham Constabulary, and I act on behalf of the Chief of Police. Delegated powers are to my manager, and this case has been obviously passed by her in its entirety, so hence why I'm acting on behalf of the Chief of Police. As long as the committee and Mr. Warren's happy with that, we'll proceed.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Warren, are you happy with that?
Absolutely, and thank you very much for indulging me in that.
Members, are we happy to go ahead on what the police and Mr. Warren's pointed out to us?
Yeah. Yes, Chair.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
it's okay. Thank you for that point, Mr. Warren, and we'll make sure that on the reports in future that is that information is given to members. The police can take note of that. So, Helen, can we have the licence and officers report, please?
Yeah, Chair, and thank you everybody, and good afternoon everyone. So as it's already been highlighted today, this is an application for the King's Head, 176 Newgate Street, to consider and determine to specify an individual as a designated premises supervisor. The application was submitted by TLT Solicitors on behalf of the premises licence holders Punch Taverns Limited. You'll see the applications attached to pages 11 to 14, Appendix 3, where it was received on the 8th of December, and it specifies Mr. Christian Burns as the proposed DPS. A plan showing the location of the premises, you'll see at Appendix 2 at page 9. Just to go through, it is a mandatory condition under the Licensing Act 2003 that where the supply of alcohol is one of the licensable activities, that there must be a designated premises supervisor. And the guidance states that the designated premises supervisor should normally be the individual who is in day-to-day control of the premises, and that's to provide a single point of accountability within the premises should any problems arise. You'll see in Appendix 4, page 16, that Durham Constabulary during the 14-day representation period in regards to this application made a representation, and you'll see details of that. There's also some additional information being submitted by both the applicant and the police, which includes some video footage. The recommendations is for the subcommittee to determine the application with a view to promoting the licensing objectives, and you're recommended to give appropriate weight to the steps that are appropriate to promote the licensing objectives. The representation, including any supporting information which has been presented by all parties. Durham County Council Statement of Licensing Policy, and you'll see the relevant parts are attached as Appendix 5, pages 18 to 22. and also at Appendix 6, pages 24 to 27, the relevant parts from the Section 182 Guidance of the Licensing Act. Also, Appendix 7, pages 29 to 31, the relevant parts from the Act are there too. Options available to members today are to grant the application or to reject the application if it considers it necessary to do so for the promotion of the crime prevention objective. As Mr. Warren's outlined, because of GDPR and everything and data protection, I am going to mention about Regulation 14 and if that part of the hearing can be heard in private, Chair. I'm not sure if at this point this is when you'll consider that, but if that part, when we view the footage, when it comes to the police representation, if the hearing can be heard in private. Thank you, Chair, and I'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you for that. First of all, does the subcommittee agree to view the footage in private?
Yeah.
Another mover to that and a seconder to that?
Chair, Councillor Hopgood from Bramgate Moor and Newton Hall Division, and move that at the appropriate time we go into private.
Thank you.
I think that, Chair, if I may speak, I think that's right what Councillor Hopgood says, at the appropriate time. The footage is part of the police's representation, so let's first hear from PC Robertson, I think, and then as part of his representations, he may want to introduce the footage and we'll go into private at that time. I think might be the right idea.
Okay, apologies, jumped the gun. So can we have any questions? We have questions from the police to the licensing officer.
Yes, Chair, I have no questions of the licensing officer this time.
Okay, questions on the report from Mr. Warren. Have you any questions on the report?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, questions from members on the report? No indications. Nothing in chat. Okay, thank you. So, legal officer, have you any comments or questions?
Just one, just to put this into context, I could probably ask Mr. Burns this, but maybe our licensing officer knows how many premises is Mr. Burns, the designated premises supervisor, at?
Currently, he's at 4 premises.
At 4, and where are those at?
Within Bishop Auckland. Just bear with me if you want me to.
Well, it may be that Mr. Burns or Mr. Warren can.
Yeah, there's the Merry Monk, Finian's, reading rooms, and what's the 4th one? Can someone jump in?
Kennedy's Bar.
Kennedy's Bar, yeah, sorry.
Right, and I think one of the questions that, if you'll indulge me, what is the most number of premises that any one DPS is in charge of in County Durham? Can I just ask that? Might you have those figures or anything along those lines?
I don't have the figures, but I do know in the past, and I don't know if it's current at the moment because without going through in detail, but there has been a DPS at a number of premises, say 2 or 3, and it more happens at off licenses. For example, if there's an area manager for a supermarket or something like that. Right. But I can't say exactly.
Right. Okay.
Without going through the records.
That's fine. It's just to try and get context, but that's fine. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we have the police now. Any representations from the police, please?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just to reiterate, my name is PC Robertson. I'm the licensing officer in Durham Constabulary. I would like to direct you first to page 8 of the bundle. So it should be titled Objection to the Varied Designated Premises Supervised Application for the King's Head Public House, Bishop Auckland, County Durham. Within the start of our representation, it's got the initial objection. I would just like to direct members to a part of my objection. I wrote this out. I have to concede that if you look about, it's in the italic section. There's a line saying Durham Constabulary objecting to the variations submitted in the Prevention of Crime and Disorder and Public Safety. The item, I concede that the item public safety is not a consideration in this matter. So I'd like to omit that, please, from that initial document. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Do members agree that we We don't take any notice of that part of the police report.
Agree.
Okay, thank you. Thank
And
you.
I'd also like to point you towards the final two paragraphs as well of that initial objection. Again, the second of last paragraph, I actually mentioned that in Durham County Council statement of licensing policy, that person who is a DPS should only be DPS at one premises. This has been inaccurate on my behalf. I'll come on to it later as to why I've kind of come up to that, but I've wrote that out wrong, and that is simply incorrect. Okay, I apologise to the committee if in any way it's been misleading, but the flavour of the statement of licensing policy by Durham County Council kind of pushes it towards kind of one person or one person being at a premises at any time. But that actual statement that's written there is a little bit misleading now, and I'd like to point that out because I think in fairness that needs pointing out.
So we're omitting that statement, are we?
I think so, yes. I can show it in other ways, but I think that's a little bit narrow. It should be it's a bit broader than what I've actually stated there.
Okay, members, can we omit that statement, please? Okay, thank you.
And the final bit as well, the last paragraph relates to it's more, rather than it being part of the objection, it's more of an update to the licensing team as to where I was at that time when I was kind of writing that objection out, sort of thing. And again, that bears no real resemblance on the actual objection that's obviously typed out above. So I would like to omit that as well, please.
Okay, members, are we agreeing to omit that? What was it, the last paragraph?
It's the last paragraph, yeah. And it relates to a conversation with a solicitor from Punch Taverns.
Okay, yeah, we've omitted that. Thank you.
And so that's all for the time being. So I would like to now move on to the following paragraph. So this is going to be the police's main evidence. Okay, so Mr. Burns is currently DPS at 4 other premises in Bishop Auckland Town Centre. He's DPS at the Merry Monk, the Reading Rooms, Kennedy's Bar and Finnegan's. In my opinion, all of which have the potential for to be popular late-night drinking establishments. So these aren't kind of restaurants; these are kind of late-night bars. I would class as them premises. So, Durham County Council Statement of Licensing Policy 2019 to 2024 refer to the role of DPS as having day-to-day control of licensable activities. It recommends that a DPS should, in its own word, be present between 2200 hours and closing time when the premises is one that regularly opens after midnight for both regulated entertainment and the supply of alcohol for consumption on the premises. Now, all 4 premises kind of fit into this where this recommendation's heading, as does the King's Head, which is where the new applications, the premises for the new application. So that's where he's been proposed. Durham Constabulary is concerned that Mr. Burns physically can't be at each of those premises to fulfil this recommendation. Now, it is just a recommendation. It is the County Council saying that it's good practice. It's not mandatory, but I worry that across 5 sites, Mr. Burns has an awful lot of responsibility, which we'll kind of go on to. So in paragraph 2, his current premises are all based around the area of the marketplace and 4 Bondgate. Now, I think I need to, if I refer you to a map which has been produced by ourselves, I'll just find it so you can direct yourselves to it. So it's page 12 of the bundle. And this map for ourselves really is important. It may other persons might not think it is, but for myself, I feel this is important. So if we look at the map, okay, you can see right at the top, there's 3 circles, and the 3 circles are circling 4 premises, and they're the 4 premises that Mr. Burns currently is DPS for. They're all in very close locality to each other and stuff like that. If you look down at the bottom of the map, you can see that where the new premises will be, which is the King's Head, which is the 5th DPS position. So the current premises are all based around the area of the marketplace and 4 Bondgate, and are all within a short walking distance of one another. There is mainly pedestrianised with a one-way road system in effect around its outskirts and access. The proximity of these premises does afford Mr. Burns some immediate control. Now, I have actually granted the 3 designated premises supervisor positions to Mr. Burns, which were done between February and September last year. And one of my considerations when I was looking at that was that at them times there was very little happening at the other premises, and also I felt that it could afford Mr. Burns the ability, or I think felt that they could have the ability to look after them premises, just simply because of the proximity. Now it's quite a busy little area, and I know COVID's kind of changed things, but that kind of area, he can kind of literally from the reading rooms, he has a minute to a 90-second walk, he can be at any of the other premises. So it'd be wrong of me to think that he doesn't have physically some control over them 4 premises around the marketplace and 4 Bondgate. However, the King's Head does not form part of these public houses. And I know this might seem minor to certain people, but it's situated about half a mile along a busy road with other licensed premises. They are, in essence, in my opinion, 2 different socialising areas. Okay, so basically you have a group of 4 premises, King's Head, the Cumberland Arms, the Mitre, and the station, which are all a group of premises all around the same area. Then there's a gap to walk into Bishop, and then you come across the other premises in which Mr. Burns has. They're kind of, in essence, 2 different kind of social areas. And it's not saying that they won't mix, but you will get some people who will just stay at that side, one side, and some people will just stay at the other side of the town. Okay, so looking at the King's Head, I would like to direct you to the actual existing premises license, which can be found to the start on page 15. And on page 15 and 16, it explains, as always, the licenses and activities that takes place at them premises. Now, this obviously premises license was granted a while ago. Them timings we're not considering within this in this committee, but them timings are important relating to how busy it potentially could be at the premises in which he's going to be, or which he has now, or which he could have if he was DPS at the King's Head. So I'd just like to direct you to the licensable activities, which are on page 16. And that's namely live and recorded music and the sale of alcohol. Okay. And the license states that live and recorded music will take place generally at about 2 o'clock most nights, apart from a Sunday, and the sale of alcohol will be at the same time again, apart from a Sunday. So this is what our classes are like a late night bar. It's a place where you can go there for a drink and drink till 2 o'clock in the morning, if you so wish. Okay. So I would like you just to keep an eye on the map that I mentioned previously. So we can see where the King's Head is at the bottom of the page. Yeah. So just bear with me. So I would like to now direct you to one of Mr. Burns' existing premises, the premises that he's had for a while. So if we could start, please, with the Merry Monk. Now, the Merry Monk's license, we'll find it. So if members could go to page 24 of the bundle, please, and you'll see the premises license for the Merry Monk. So, and again, this is my opinion, the Merry Monk appears to be Mr. Burns's long-standing business interest. So this is paragraph 3 of the text, having been DPS there for a number of years. It has licensed activities, namely live recorded music and late night refreshments till 1 AM, Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, 2 AM on a Thursday and a Sunday, and 3 AM on Friday and Saturday, with alcohol sales terminating 15 minutes prior to these times each day. The alcohol sales can be found, alcohol sales can be found on page 26. They're always at the bottom of the boxes, sort of thing. So alcohol sales, say on a Friday and Saturday night, for instance, are $2.45, and the other license of activities, say on Friday and Saturday night, are 3 o'clock. Okay. Now, I've done some research because I think it's only fair that we look at them premises and see what's been happening at them premises. So there's been 12 incidents reported to the police and 17 visits carried out since the beginning of 2020. What I've done for each premises, I have done a search on what visits and what incidents taken place, and they're all relate to the timeline I've done from the beginning of 2020. I think it's unfair to go back further and further and further because it ends up like kind of on what's actually right now. So I will go through what incidents have taken place there. These haven't been produced yourselves. I can go through for the members and the rest of the people attending what's actually been happening on premises, because I think it's only fair to Mr. Burns that all of the incidents are spoken about rather than just a certain one that I've kind of picked out. So, instance-wise, at that premises. So, on the 4th of the 2nd, so this is pre-COVID, okay, there was an incident took place there relating to a female who believed to have a drink spike at the premises. Okay. On the 15th of the 2nd, the door staff contacted 999 relating to an intoxicated person. On the 7th of the 3rd, a member of staff reported having been assaulted, as well as other members of staff had been too. On the 15th of the 8th, so there's obviously a big gap, and obviously the gap from March onwards is the beginning of lockdown for COVID. On the 15th of the 8th, a disagreement between two males, unrelated to the pub, but just happened to be at the pub. On the 21st of the 8th, there was a report of a drink driver at the premises. On the 29th of the 8th, a report of an intoxicated male. This has come from his parents, saying that he's been ejected and potentially assaulted by door staff at the premises. On the 29th of the 8th, there was a report of from a caller saying a lack of social distancing, particularly in the beer garden. On the 30th of the 8th, call reporting a large group of people queuing at the Merry Monk, no distance between, adhered to, sorry. Another COVID related thing, no distancing on the 12th of the 9th. A male assaulted by another male on the 12th of the 9th. On the 17th of the 9th, staff reporting a male being abusive, aggressive towards staff. On the 29th of the 10th, another drink driver. What I will say is that them incidents, I don't want to go into too much detail of them incidents, but the point I'm trying to get across is the fact that that pub is a busy little pub. We have a situation where there's people reporting stuff in it, and may well be a whole, to be blunt, a whole load of rubbish and stuff like that. But this place is a place where there's a number of incidents, and as a result, there's visits carried out. Now, for Durham Constabulary's kind of, since COVID really like took over everything that we do, Durham Constabulary have kind of had to go out and do, well, the staff of Durham Constabulary had to go out and do a number of visits to licensed premises over certain periods of time. And this is not only to support licensed premises, but to also kind of deter people from misbehaving in them licensed premises, ensure that COVID regulations are being upheld and stuff like that. Now, this premises, the Merry Monks, had 17 visits carried out in that time. And again, I think it's important that we look at it from full point of view of what actually came out of them visits. So on the 11th of the 3rd, there was a visit carried out at the premises, and it relating to an issues with family members, not at the premises, but and Mr. Burns was spoken to relating to it, and he filled in the blanks relating to it, and there was no further action taken with that. On the 27th of the 3rd, there was checks to ensure premises were complying with current government guidelines, and again that was in order. On the 26th of the 4th, again, a checked to make sure that COVID-19 guidelines have been adhered to and the closure was being adhered to, and that was again all in order. On the 13th of the 5th, there was another visit carried out, again another check and all in order. On the 22nd of the 5th, visit carried out at the premises regarding COVID, and again there was no sign of activity and the premises were closed. On the 24th of the 7th, there was another visit carried out. Mr. Burns was on the scene. The report was hand sanitizer, social distance, COVID signage, all in order. 8 people on premises. The TV was silent and very quiet music. On the 10th of the 7th, we spoke to a member of staff. 13 people on the premises, no issues. On the 25th of the 7th, again, spoke with Chris Burns, 10 persons on premises, no issues. On the 14th of the 8th, another visit was taking place. Now, this visit is going to we're going to come on to, because this forms part of our kind of concerns, and this relates to a visit by the neighbourhood policing sergeant. Okay, and his update is that on the 14th of the 8th, he's visited the premises, digital track and trace, reduced capacity, door supervision in place. His words were, the DPS is an appalling attitude, argumentative and unprofessional. Loud music outside was excessively loud, but there was no other issues and only 28 people on premises. On the 21st of the 8th, there was another visit carried out. Approximately 30 people on premises, the DPS is on site and there was a live singer on. On the 2nd of the 9th, there was a member of staff spoken to. Now, this member of staff, which I referred to as initials of AW, and I think this will be the same member of staff who's provided a statement on behalf of Mr. Burns. He's actually stated on that visit, he started 6 weeks ago as a manager for all Christian Burns premises. I walked through the Merry Monk, the reading rooms, the Finnegans, and there was no issues. On the 5th to 9th, again another licensing check, no issues identified. 6 people inside, no issues, concerns identified. And on the 10th of the 10th, premises adhering to COVID regs, not very busy. 24th to 10th, Operation Gateway check spoken to again, AW, only 3 customers on site. 4th to 11th, paid closed, quiet outside. 8th to 11th, COVID checks all in order. 1st to 12th, checks and in order. So that is the full list for the last kind of 13 months relating to that premises. But I would like to direct members to an incident that's been obviously we've stated, which is that on the 14th of August 2020, Sergeant Howell of Bishop Auckland Police carried out a routine visit and reported back to police licensing, that's ourselves, of poor attitude and argumentative nature on behalf of Mr. Burns towards the police during that visit. My personal opinion is that Durham Constabulary expects a positive degree of cooperation with the police by someone holding the position of DPS. Now, body worn footage was taken of that, and again, I would like to show that footage, but again, we'll do that if you have no problem. We'll do that with all the other footage at in the future. Is that all right?
I think, Ian, that we've agreed to look at that at the appropriate moment already, so you can carry on with your report.
Thank you very much. So I would like to now direct you to the second premises, Mr. Burns' DPS of, which is a premises called the Reading Rooms. So there's a copy of the licence in the bundle. I'll just find the appropriate page number. 58. Page 58. Yeah. So the Reading Rooms was opened in around July 2020 and is situated a minute's walk across the marketplace from the Merry Monk. And since opening, Mr. Burns has been DPS. It has licensed activities, namely live and recorded music, late night refreshment, and sale of alcohol until 4 AM each day. During the time since it's been opened in July 2020, there's been one incident reported and 13 visits carried out since the beginning of 2020. the visit again. I have members, and like I say, there's only been one incident which I'm going to refer to anyway. We're going through the actual visits that's been taking place. Just bear with me. It's been 13 of them. So on the first, sorry, I'm running backwards here. Apologies. So on the 24th to 7th, there was a visit carried out. DBS not on scene. A manager, surname, sorry, the initials SH. Was on scene. No problems with social distancing. Signage for COVID. 3 inside, like patrons, 10 outside. Piano entertainment. 10th to 7th. Again, manager on site. 90 persons on the premises. Playing. 2 dormant, and the revisit 1900 hours, and there's no issues. On the 11th to 7th, the DPS was, sorry, the manager was on site. DPS wasn't on site. About 30 patrons plus staff, no issues reported. On the 24th to 7th, again a visit, spoke to the manager. There was no customers at that time. On the 25th to 7th, again a visit, spoke to the manager. 30 persons on premises, piano playing. 21st to the 8th, 25 people on premises, background music only playing. On the 2nd to the 9th, stated that they spoke to a gentleman with the initials AW. Started 6 weeks ago as manager for Christian Burns premises. Walked through the Merry Monk, the reading rooms at Finnegan's. I think we've heard this before. Yeah, no issues and happy. They're all COVID aware. 10th to 10th, premise was adhering to COVID regs, not very busy. 20th to 10th. Now this visit relates to the incident that we're going to talk about, which is the single incident that was reported. So I'll come back to that one. There's more visits, checks, no issues, premises in darkness, checks all in order, checks all in order. So I would like to now return back to the main evidence from ourselves. And this relates to the single reported incident to the police. So back in the text, single incident was reported to the police on the 2nd of November 2020 regarding the COVID breach. Now, there is a Facebook video footage that was sent to us relating to it. We've captured that, and again, when it's appropriate, we'll play that footage. Okay. So I'd like to now direct the members to Kennedy's Bar, which I believe is on page 37, the actual license. Thank you. So Kennedy's Bar was opened in September 2020 and situated a couple of minutes walk from the reading rooms along 4 Bondgate, which is a street just off the marketplace. There's licensed activities, namely live and recorded music until 1 AM on Monday and Saturday, 22:30 PM on Sunday, and the sale of alcohol until 12:30 AM Monday to Saturday and 10:30 PM on the Sunday. There's been no incidents reported to the police and 7 visits carried out since the beginning of 2020. So the continuation of the text refers to an incident that took place on the 17th of October. Again, I have the, there's no other instance, there's no instance being actually directly reported to the police. This turned out to be a call made by Durham County Council in relation to the premises on the evening 17th of October. So they carried out a visit with DCC, and DCC found COVID-related issues at the premises. Mr. Burns was not on the site, but attended from elsewhere, and there's body-worn footage of the visit which is captured. And I would like to kind of show that again, that footage once it's appropriate. I'll come back to what happened at Kennedy's Bar later on in the text. And the final premises that Mr. Burns has responsibility for as DPS is Finnegan's Bar. It was taken over by Mr. Burns in February 2020 and situated opposite Kennedy's Bar on 4 Bondgate. It has licensable activities, namely recorded music and alcohol sales until midnight, that's Sunday to Thursday, and 1 AM on a Friday and Saturday. There's been one incident reported there, and this was kind of just as Mr. Burns was taken over and completely irrelevant to this committee, and being 8 visits carried out there. Just for members, if you go to page 50, it'll show the premises license for Finnegan's, which has the times of the license of activity. So the 8 visits that were carried out at Finnegan's in that time. As I say, I'd just like to say there's one incident which is relevant to the proceedings. So the 9th of the 2nd, there was a visit carried out then, there was no issues. On the 6th of the 3rd, there was the premises, no issues. 26th of the 4th, check to ensure premises are complying current government guidelines and all in order. 11th of the 7th, check premises appeared in order. The 10th of the 7th, it says DPS on site, spoke with bar manager 2, no issues reported, 3 persons on the premises, 2 door staff. 2nd of the 9th, spoke with again AW, which has been mentioned in a few of the premises. And this is the same text as what's been relayed to the other visit at the exact time. Stated 6 weeks ago, started 6 weeks ago as manager for all of Christian Burns' premises. We walked to the Mary Monk, the reading rooms of Finnegan's, and no issues were found. 10th of the 10th, premises adhering to COVID regs, not very busy. 4th to 11th, premises closed in darkness, and the 1st to 12th, checked them in order. Other than just mention that Finnegan's, there's no other things relating to Finnegan's in the rest of the committee hearing. So to go back to the text, before current premises mentioned all have timings that have potential for late night patrons, and Mr. Burns' level of responsibility to uphold the licensing objectives is high as such. So all of the premises all have kind of, in a way, kind of quite late licensing times. Like I say, the reading rooms has to about 4. Mary Monk has till about 3 o'clock in the morning on a weekend. The other 2 places are after midnight, and the proposed place, the King's Head, has till about 2:30. So they're all what I would class as late night bars. And obviously the type of premises, obviously the incidents that take place in there obviously need to be carefully scrutinised by the DPS and obviously the local police and stuff like that. So 3 of these premises, so the premises that we've mentioned, namely the Finnegan's, Kennedy's, and the reading rooms, I only granted kind of from February till September last year. When I say granted, I mean that from our point of view, we had no objection to them premises at that time. Okay, so they've only been operating for a short space of time. 3 of these premises have only been operating for a short space of time, and during the time of COVID restrictions and subject to a number of lockdowns. Mr. Burns has not had the opportunity to run these premises both individually and collectively and at full capacity. We must consider both the responsibility placed on him and his staff at present, fulfilling the responsibilities demanded by the ever-changing COVID landscape, and from the time business returned to a degree of normality post-pandemic. So we must consider not just now, we must consider the future as well. Mr. Burns has not been tested. Oops. Mr. Burns has not been tested at capacity with these 4 premises. Adding a 5th may further dilute his control of all of it. To reiterate, Durham County Council Statement of Licensing Policy recommends that DPS should be present between 2200 hours and closing time when the premise is one that regularly opens after midnight for both regulated entertainment and the supply of alcohol consumption on the premises. And just bear with me, Chair. So could I direct members to page 21 of the bundle, please? So this is taken from Durham County Council's Statement of Licence and Policy. I'd like to reiterate what I said initially about in the initial objection, that the Statement of Licence and Policy states that it should be only the DBS for one premises. That's inaccurate, and this is kind of what I was getting at. If you just look at kind of about 4 kind of paragraphs down, it says in bold, the council considers to be good practice of the DBS of the premises licence holders present at the licensing area of the premises between 2200 hours and closing time, when the premises one that regularly opens after midnight for both regular entertainment and the sale of alcohol for consumption of the premises. And if you could just direct it to kind of, I wouldn't class them all as vertical drinking establishments on the second part of that statement, but there certainly is the capacity for all of them premises to be vertical drinking establishments. And third point, at times where there's a substantial increase in customers, i.e. for televised major sporting events. The nature of these premises, for me, kind of fit into that category, or that kind of statement there, where it relates to vertical drinking establishments, the potential for televised sporting events and stuff like that. They are, for me, kind of bars, and the new premises that's been considered is a bar as well. They have late night licenses, and the Statement of Licence and Policy recommends or shows good practice that from 2200 hours the DBS be on site. For me, I worry how Mr. Burns can fulfil this recommendation, being in 5 places at once, and that's kind of a grave concern. This is where this kind of objections kind of come from. Can I just go to point 4? I briefly stated on the 17th of October 2020, DCC and Durham Constabulary visited Kennedy's Bar and found issues with patrons breaching COVID regulations. Mr. Burns was not on site at the time of the visit, but did attend from another premises. There is police body-worn video of the visit and the discussion that took place with Mr. Burns. The premises was subsequently issued with the direction to close on the 24th of October 2020 by DCC due to the issues discovered at the visit on the 17th. This incident appears to undermine the crime and disorder licensing objective. I want to omit where it says in bold public safety. There was also police body-worn video of the notice being served by DCC to Mr. Burns at the Merry Monk on the 23rd of October. Mr. Burns appears argumentative on both occasions with the local authority. As an enforcement authority and considering DCC's statement licence policy, we expect a cooperative and positive degree of engagement from all of our DBSs. The footage shows Mr. Burns has a rather poor level of respect for both persons in authority on those occasions. There is body-worn video of Ms. Nicola Gill, DCC, and police attending the reading rooms to request CCTV from Kennedy's Bar, but yet to date, Mr. Burns has not produced a request for the CCTV, even though the request is conducive with the conditions stated on the licence. So the licence of Kennedy's Bar states that CCTV should be operational and should be available to the police or other authorised authority. So on that date, Nicola Gill, who works for Durham County Council, requested CCTV from the incident that took place on the 17th at Kennedy's Bar. Okay, that CCTV has never been produced by Mr. Burns. Can I now direct the committee to some statements from, from Nicola Gill. Now these statements, the statement, and there's another statement from the officer who attended with her, The statement was produced later after the bundle had already been produced, so I would like to take members to agenda item number 4 towards the back of the bundle, further information from the applicant at Durham Constabulary. So the statement is on, looks like page 10, it's kind of been typed over. So it's a statement from Nicola Gill, who's Licensed Enforcement Officer for Durham County Council. It reads, I am the above-named person employed by Durham County Council as Licensed Enforcement Officer, position I have held since April 2014. On Saturday, the 17th of October 2020.
Robson, sorry, can I intervene? The committee will have read the statement.
Oh, right, sorry.
I don't think we need you to read it out in full for the benefit of this. I'll be directed by my chair, but I think everyone has read the paperwork. I don't think you need to be reading it out in the hearing. But the chair might have other ideas, but I'd suggest not.
No, I think that we have read it, but if there's any points that you wish to raise within that report, we're willing to hear those, of course.
Absolutely.
Can the committee confirm that they've read the statement of not just Nicola Gill, but also of Andrew List, who was with her at the time?
Yes, we can.
Oh, right. Sorry, my apologies. I hadn't realised that you'd actually read it. Sorry. If you just bear with me, I'll just get to the next batch of paperwork. My apologies, Chair. I'm just looking for another report that was produced. Apologies, Chair. I'm just looking for a certain document, such as the bundle. Located. Yes, that's it. Now, take it to page 13, please, of the bundle. Rather than going through this, can I ask whether or not the committee have read this evidence that's been produced? Can the committee confirm that they've?
Yes, we have. Mr. Warren, do you have a comment?
Sorry, I'm losing track as to which bundle we're on. Is it the original or is it the first or second addendum? Sorry,
Mr. Warren. Yes, it's the first one as far as I'm aware. Page 13.
13 of the first bundle.
So sorry, no, sorry.
What's in relation to PC Robertson? What are we looking for?
It's a report from Nicola Gill relating to events on the 15th, 16th, 17th, and 20th of October.
So it's in the second bundle.
Second bundle.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Mr. Warren. It's on page 13.
There's a lot of documents. It's in the second.
There is.
From page 13. Chair, can you confirm that? I mean, relying that the committee have read all of the papers in any event, but obviously, PC Robinson, if you want to highlight, produce some highlights of what you think is relevant within those documents, then that's fair enough.
Yes, Stephen, that's what I would say.
Okay, so on the 15th to 10th, obviously there's a report come in about complaints regarding the reading rooms and Kennedy's Bar. Okay, so they are like COVID related complaints. Okay, it's coming from the MP's office. Okay, and that's probably prompted the visits then, and rightly so, prompted visits to the premises on the 16th and 17th. Okay. So the essence of the 17th visit, okay, was that, well, actually, in fairness, looking at the visit on the 16th, okay, there was a couple who approached the Miss Gill coming out of the premises, and this is Kennedy's Bar we're referring to, saying that it felt unsafe because they were upset because people were mingling without face coverings and stuff like that. Okay, and then on the 17th, which has prompted the second visit, there has been the initial visit took place with Nicola Gill and Andrew List, where they went into the premises, and their evidence, for what I've read, it's my interpretation, but their evidence is that the music was excessive. There was people mingling. There was breaches of COVID in the sense that people were sharing a microphone. There was people stand-up dancing. There was too many people in the premises, sort of thing. Now, from my understanding, is they've then left them premises and contacted the police for some support. The police have then arrived. 3 police officers then arrived and went back into the premises. And the body-worn video I have is from the second visit, which I would like to show, obviously, members once it's appropriate. That body-worn video shows Mr. Burns coming from one of his premises to speak to the DCC. Within that video, there is a lot of comment by Mr. Burns that he wants to work closely with the police and stuff like that, and closely with DCC. But there is a certain aspect which we'll come to in the video where comments are made relating to COVID breaches, and it appears that Mr. Burns may well agree that that may well have happened. On the 20th of the 10th, like I said before, we've went to Kennedy's Bar. I accompanied Miss Gill to ask for CCTV footage. On the 21st of October, Mr. Burns had contacted Mr. Gill, and he made the decision to close Kennedy's Bar, commercial decision to close Kennedy's Bar. It wasn't viable to operate with the restrictions. Again, CCTV footage was still required, but yet to this date, the CCTV has not been produced by Mr. Burns. I'd like to now kind of return to of my evidence, paragraph number 5. So as briefly stated, on the 2nd of November 2020, police received a complaint relating to COVID issues at the reading rooms. A video was in public circulation on Facebook where it appeared COVID breaches had taken place on the premises while a live singer was performing. The footage raised concerns regarding crime and disorder, and again, I would like to omit public safety from that statement regarding the licence and objectives. That week, all the pubs closed by the government, and subsequently no action was taken regarding any direction by DCC. And again, I have video footage of that. So that footage, which we'll show, actually, it's probably better to talk about it once you actually see the footage, sort of thing. But that footage was obtained after a report of the police, which was passed to DCC. But unfortunately, within days after being passed to DCC, the government closed pubs anyway. So, to my knowledge, no subsequent action was taken in relation to that. Just to sum up, this is pretty much our case. With regards to the incident that took place on the 17th of October, I think it's important to note that prior to that, 3 premises DBS applications were, there was no objection by ourselves up until between February and September for Mr. Burns to run them premises. When them premises were, when the DBS applications came in, there was no evidence to suggest that Mr. Burns couldn't run them premises. However, in October, there was a situation took place on the 17th, which has caused concern, or highlighted some concerns that we have relating to the run of them premises during the times of COVID restrictions. Just for the committee, the police and the local authority delegate different powers relating to whatever takes place relating to COVID. At the minute, we deal with gatherings. We use what classes the 4 E's in order to ensure that people aren't gathering and passing and spreading the disease, COVID disease. We have the powers to arrest. We have the powers to issue fixed penalties. So that firmly gatherings sorts and non-wearing of masks in premises falls firmly at the door of Durham Constabulary, and we class as quite a serious issue. Again, there's some concerns relating to the CCTV from them premises being requested. I know Mr. Burns has obviously intimated that he felt that it was unjust what happened at the premises and it should never have been closed. What I would say is that the request of the CCTV, and if the production of that CCTV had taken place, it would have resolved what had actually happened in them premises. But we never, prior to the police getting there at 8 p.m. on the 17th, and also on the incident on the 2nd of November relating to the reading rooms, which again is another one of Mr. Burns's premises that he's got to look after. The video footage that is shown from Facebook again has heightened our concerns relating to the run of the premises during this time. I know no action's been taken by DCC, but again, if the police had been called to them, the police would have had to probably dealt with the immediate patrons, which are under the control of the premises. And I think it's important to note that, in conclusion, that I'm not trying to say that Mr. Burns is a poor operator. He is operating in a difficult time, as all operators are. He will no doubt tell you that he's trying his best, and from the visits and stuff that it looks like he is trying his best. But on 2 occasions, he's been caught kind of short in our expectations. And when the 5th application comes in, and you have 2 instances where the crime disorder licence objective has been kind of undermined, I've got to consider in my role whether or not a 5th and granting more diluted control to Mr. Burns, whether or not that's irresponsible or not. And I have to state that we're not trying to kick Mr. Burns at all, but I worry that him, his staff, and the responsibility and the expectation that's placed on him to run them 4 premises now and in the future post-pandemic is great. A 5th one further stretches him, dilutes him, whatever way you look, and that the concerns that we have is the reason why we're here today. And that's all I'll say at this moment. I'll take any questions.
I'm going to ask the legal officer, would it be appropriate to see the CCTV and then ask the questions, or?
Yes, I think so, Chair. I think you've got that right. I think, and then everyone has a full picture and everyone can ask relevant questions after that, I think.
Okay, does anyone want a 5-minute comfort break?
Chair, before we go any further, can I just mention Councillor Hopgood did propose about watching the CCTV, but it didn't get seconded.
Yes. So you're going to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll do that now. Right. Okay.
Does anybody want a 5-minute comfort break, or before we watch the?
Chair, I could do with a glass of water.
Okay, we'll allow you to do that. I'm going to
Cheers.
just grab it. So
Chair.
we're going to go into the private part now, Jill. Is that okay?
Yes, Chair, if Ken could suspend the broadcast.
Thank you. Good afternoon. We're back into the public part of the meeting after viewing CCTV video in private. We're now at the point on the agenda where we've had representations from the police, and we're going to take questions on the police's representations from the licensing officer. Helen, have you any questions?
Nothing, Chair.
Okay, we've got questions now from Mr. Warren, the applicant's solicitor.
We have no questions at this stage. I'll just make submissions. I think that's easier and quicker. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions from members of the police? I've got nothing in chat. I have a question, if I may. We've had no information about the King's Head pub. That's the pub that we're considering at the moment. Can I ask if there's been any incidences or visits to this pub and the sort of premises that pub is, please?
Yep. So I do have a list of the incidents that have taken place there. Actually, Mr. Burns and Mr. Warren might be able to fill us in, or actually, representative from Punch. It is, as the premises being closed for some time.
I'll leave Jason to answer that, if I may.
No, it's only been closed under COVID regulations. No, it's been operating when it can operate.
Yeah.
But there's never been any incidences there, not to my knowledge. Not that's been brought to Punch's knowledge anyway.
Chair, we just bear with us. I'm just going through the incident logs for it. Make sure I've got the right information. So as it stands at the moment, again, from the same period of time, from the beginning of January last year, there was an incident reported on the 28th of the 3rd. And it was an anonymous caller stating that the premises were still trading. States regulars are accessing the building via the back door. The 21st of the 3rd, caller reporting that there's been people entering the premises from the rear of the property, the back door for people to enter. And on the 3rd of the 4th, there's been a domestic related incident there, which is irrelevant. I don't think it's relevant to this. So there's been 2 calls relating to COVID breaches. I can turn around and tell you that a lot of pubs have had that. Do you know what I mean? Sort of thing. So I can probably tell you how many visits there's been. So there's been 2 significant things reported. So visits wise, there was a visit carried out on the 17th of the 1st. And that must have been with the old, or the previous DPS or kind of manager sort of thing. Guy the initials of RB, and it was just relating to attending a pub watch meeting. Another visit on the 27th of the 3rd. Check to ensure that premises are complying with the government advice. All in order. The 1st of the 4th. It was probably off the back of the reports earlier. Front and back checked, all secure. The pub was in darkness, no signs of blinkers. On the 26th of the 4th, check to ensure the premises are complying with current government guidelines. All in order.
So thank you, Ian. That's the information I was after. No real problems with that.
No.
Thank you very much. So no questions from members. So have we any questions or comments from the legal officer?
Not on this occasion, Chair.
Okay, so Mr. Warren, now's your chance to address the committee.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to PC Robertson for a comprehensive overview. And I think some of that's very helpful, but obviously we need to look at the legalities of this. I'm going to deal with first and foremost just the basics here. You'll have seen my skeleton argument. It's in the final additional bundle of papers, and it starts at page 3. So I won't go through all of that because obviously you will have read it, but I will draw out some of the points from there as we go along. I would also just want to add, though, that PC Robertson made reference to a statement on pages 13 and 14, I think, of the original bundle, which was to do with the report from officers over a couple of days. He mentioned dancing in that statement. There is no reference to dancing in that statement. So I just wanted to clarify that. There is absolutely no reference to dancing in that statement, but I think all the other parts of it, I don't think we've got any issues with at all. I don't know, councillors, how often you deal with DPS applications like this. I'm going to imagine it's fairly rare. It certainly is in my experience, and I've been doing licensing since before the 2003 Act came into force in 2006. And I can count on one hand how many times we've done these. Often what happens is someone else is just simply appointed. And indeed, in this case, it would have been perfectly acceptable and indeed something that Mr. Burns could have done in conjunction with Punch Taverns as the premises license holder to appoint his manager at the King's Head there. There are a number of reasons why he chose not to take that course of action, and I'll go through why that is. This is not for any other reason than actually we feel, having discussed it with Mr. Burns, and he feels that at this time the best course of action is for him to be appointed DPS at that site and to oversee its management, as he is, after all, our tenant, and therefore has responsibility to us to ensure that the premises complies with all legal requirements. The Licensing Act, when it was introduced, didn't really make much reference to what a DPS is, and I'm afraid that's still the case. It's kind of this little Bermuda Triangle within the Act that if you fall into it, no one knows if you're going to come out the other side. All it says is the DPS is the person who is designated as the premises supervisor on the premises license, which is obviously a very helpful statement for all of us here today trying to pick our way through it. What we need to draw from that, though, is that anyone who holds a personal license can act as DPS, and Mr. Burns obviously does hold a personal license. And it's worth noting that sales of alcohol must be authorised through a personal license holder rather than the DPS. Now, that's a deliberate choice by government, and the reason they've done that is, and it's an important distinction, is that effectively the DPS role is an oversight role. The sale of alcohol and the supervision thereof is a role for the personal license holder. They can be the same person, but they don't have to be the same person. So we have to have in the back of our mind that they are different roles, and actually the notion that someone who's DPS has to be on site at all times, quite easily, we would all understand doesn't require them to be there 24/7, holidays, sickness. Lots of DPSs, I can tell you as a matter of fact, acting for pub companies like Punch and various others around the country. Lots of DPSs do hold multiple sites, and you've heard that from your officer today, that there are multiple DPS holders, if you like, within your region alone. Now, if you extrapolate that out, and people can hold across a number of regions, there could be more that you're not aware of as well. So this isn't an unusual situation, albeit 5 is probably what one would say is to the larger end. I'm not going to say it's totally it's something I've never come across before, because I have come across it candidly for various reasons, sometimes different to this, but actually sometimes quite similar to this for management purposes. So I will deal with that shortly. We look at the guidance for the functions of DPSs, and I set those out in my skeleton for you. And what the guidance says is that the person will normally be given day-to-day responsibility. So it's not an absolute, and it could have been made an absolute had the government wished it to be so. The main purpose, in line with oversight, is to allow officers, and this is clear from the guidance, to immediately identify who the DPS is so that they can deal with problems swiftly. And I think it's very fair to say that those of you involved in licensing in the town here know Mr. Burns very well. Section 4.37 of the guidance is the key part here, because it says that DPS may supervise 2 or more premises. And it doesn't specify a maximum, it just says 2 or more to ensure the licensing objectives are promoted. Now, what we say here is that actually is quite key in terms of Mr. Burns is taking responsibility for his premises in what is a very difficult time for operators. And it's certainly not a time that, as PC Robertson implied in his statement, that things are easier because obviously we're not acting at full capacity. I can tell you from bitter experience of dealing with premises across the country, this is the most difficult time that premises license holders have had operating their premises. And there's a number of reasons for that, partly because actually what you're doing is asking customers to do things that are unnatural to them, i.e. under tier 3 it was sitting down, not interacting with other people that weren't at their table, all the things that people go out to do, but also COVID fatigue and people trying to get around the rules. And that's where some of the difficulties come in. But I think it would be very remiss of anyone here to think that Mr. Burns has done anything other than take that responsibility incredibly seriously. He employed an expert to come in to help him with his risk assessments. And indeed, we'll come on to how effective that's been later. But he has taken this role very seriously. We need to look at why the police and how the police can object here, because obviously that's the basis for your legal officer advising you as to what determination you can make. So section 37(5) of the Licensing Act says police can only object in exceptional cases and on the basis the appointment would undermine the crime prevention objective, which is why I was very pleased to hear PC Robertson do away with the public safety aspect of it, because this is just crime and disorder licensing objective that's relevant. There are no other relevant considerations that you can take into account here. And indeed, if you want to look at what's exceptional, which is the wording used in the Act, we have to look at the guidance again. And indeed, you will see an example given in the guidance, which appears in the first bundle, so the original bundle of papers at page 24, which is taken from paragraph 4.39 of the guidance, and paraphrasing it, what it says is, if you want an example of what exceptional may be where the police may object, a personal license holder finds himself at court under prosecution for underage sales. The court, for whatever reason, decide on conviction that he can still retain his personal license, and then he is seeking to be DPS at a premises that is known for having issues with underage drinking. So if you think about the test of that, that's a very high test. Not only has he been prosecuted for an offence, which we would all take very seriously, and by the skin of his teeth in this example kept his personal licence, he must then be applying to be DPS at a premises where there is an issue known for known underage drinking. So are we anywhere near that in terms of a test for what is exceptional? My submission to you is no, quite clearly. Now, great play has been made of the service of the direction under the COVID regulations. And I just want to deal with that very quickly. That's dealt with under coronavirus regulations. And if I can just find my copy of it for your legal advisor, it's the Health Protection Corona Restrictions England number 3 regulations 2020. One of so many iterations now that I have to read it out because I lose track, frankly, of where we are. What that makes clear is that a direction can only be given where conditions are met and there is a serious and imminent threat to public health. Now, the reason I mention that is that it says public health. It doesn't say crime and disorder. It doesn't have anything else within it. It must be on a public health ground. So then we look at what that means in real terms. That in and of itself is not a criminal offence. If a direction is served, it does not demonstrate any criminal offence. The only criminal offence under those regulations is if you then contravene the direction of the regulation. No one here is suggesting that there's been any contravention of the direction. As you heard, actually, it was eventually withdrawn. So we have no criminal offence there related to a direction served by the council. So when you're looking at the crime and disorder directive, you can't take that into account. The police say, and this is, I think, the nub of the case here, sort of the crux of it, that Mr. Burns being DPS at 4 premises, the 5th would stretch him in a way that was unwarranted and might in and of itself be problematic. And indeed, I was very pleased to hear PC Robertson say that Mr. Burns, they're not trying to do him down as a DPS, as it were, albeit we've seen an example that I'll come on to in a minute of where, let's say, passions got the better of him. But let's deal with the facts as they are. You have in front of you, from the police evidence, 2 allegations of breaches of the COVID regulations over the course of 45 visits over the course of a 12-month period. When I looked at this statistic, was frankly amazed, because the regulations, we're on iteration, I think 62 now, of regulation and guidance changes. Some of them were at the last minute. I remember being up on a Monday evening to advise clients that were opening on a Tuesday morning as to regulation changes that came through. That is actually quite phenomenal. You've heard that of those visits because PC Robertson very kindly and very helpfully and in a balanced way read out what happened over the course of those. There were no complaints apart from these 2 times where there are obviously allegations on the Facebook side and then on the visit of breaches. That is, by any standard, I submit, an exceptional record, and that demonstrates the level not only to which Mr. Burns takes his duties seriously, but his staff, his management team, and anyone who enters the premises. Now, as I said earlier, no one would, on reflection, look at the challenge that was given to the sergeant who visited in August, so some months ago, to the premises and say, yeah, that's the way I'd normally deal with things. And indeed, given that there are significant numbers of visits afterwards by officers, one cannot say that that is an ordinary course of events or the one course of events that should define your consideration of Mr. Burns as an operator. The reality is actually that the whole process and everything he's gone through would demonstrate that he is in the main very helpful. And indeed, even one of the CCTV footage that you're shown, I think, to sort of suggest that he's a challenging individual. I would say, yes, he challenges the points that he feels should be challenged, and we all have a right to. This isn't a police state, and I don't think PC Robertson would say that no one's allowed to query when they're being given advice or indeed being told what the rules are in a dynamic rule changing environment. We're not talking about the law here, we're talking about guidance, and the guidance, I'm afraid, has been very grey on these areas. But he does say, and the evidence shows, that where there are requests to do things, they are done. So the first visit on the evening in October, there's a difference of opinion as to whether the music's too loud, for instance. Well, that's changed by the time of the second visit. And we could go on. There are lots of examples of actually Mr. Burns and his team dealing with people properly and dealing with the actions that are needed to ensure that the premises operate without breaching COVID regulations. You were given a list of incidents. Candidly, I'm just going to say on the basis of those, I'm not sure we can actually infer much in terms of crime and disorder from them. Some of them that were read out actually showed proactive management, but we have no evidence, none of the CRIS reports, none of the backup reports that demonstrate what those incidents are. So we can't really comment in any great detail. What I would say is this, of course, is that some of the incidents that were read out were actually allegations, not substantiated allegations, but allegations. And in PC Robinson's own words, some of them could be a whole lot of rubbish. Thankfully, he said it, which saves me from saying that as well. So I'm going to say there is no weight that can be added there in terms of evidencing crime and disorder associated with Mr. Burns or his premises. The key point here, and I think it's crucial that we grasp this, is that this isn't a there you go, my lights have just gone off. I'll try and keep reading my notes as I go, and if not, I may excuse myself for a moment or two. the truth is that he has no intention of remaining DPS at his sites. You saw this in my skeleton argument. He wants to ensure his management team are up to snuff, are up to doing the job that he sets and the standards that he wants them to meet. That should be something that we all celebrate. You know, the reality is, if you're experienced on this committee, no doubt you will have seen on many occasions operators of premises who throw their managers under the bus at the first chance, or put someone on as DPS who's inexperienced on the basis it puts some distance between them and any potential problems at the premises. To grasp the nettle and to actually take control, as Mr. Burns is asking you to allow him to do here, at this time, when regulations change so regularly, and until he is satisfied his managers are up to the job, I would say to you is compelling evidence of a man who takes his obligations very seriously, and we need to commend that as a means of operating. When the managers are ready, they'll be given the responsibility, but it will always be the case that if the police or anyone else have any concerns, they should take them to Mr. Burns first and foremost, as the man who, if you like, oversees the operation of his premises. The point about geography, I think, is perhaps not quite as serious as maybe PC Robertson said. It's a couple of minutes, if you're going to be honest, to walk down the road to the other premises. Not much more than that. If needed, Mr. Burns can be there. We're talking about a very close proximity, bearing in mind that a number of people who hold multiple licenses hold them in different towns. Where you can't get across town, and that's perfectly acceptable as well. It's all about how you promote the objectives in the premises. So I'm going to invite you to ask some questions in a moment, but just as a final point, what I'd say is this. This is a very difficult time for operators. It's an incredibly stressful time for operators. Businesses are going under at a very quick rate. Probably now, if I'm honest with you, you're looking at something similar to the crash in 2008 to 2010 in terms of premises gripping on with their fingernails to their operations and their businesses. In this case, we have a man who's willing to take premises on in these dark and difficult times and operate them for the benefit of the town and for people who need, frankly, the ability, when we all get to go outside again, to go out and see people and mingle. The one thing I would say that's come out of this that's possibly good is that I think even for people who don't visit the pub or restaurants, that people have now come to understand the importance of these premises in towns for people. And I think we will all be looking to use them when we get back to some kind of normality. Mr. Burns won't be DPS at these premises forever, as I've said, and if you're worried about this setting some kind of precedent, well, if you could find someone else with 35 years plus experience who's the head of the Licensed Victuallers Association, former chairman or chairman of Pub Watch, and indeed a personal license trainer who trains all his staff and has many staff with personal licenses on his books, then those are the kind of people, frankly, who should be commended as being DPSs at premises, the ones who take responsibility and have the experience to do so. So these are exceptional circumstances and exceptional times, but not in the way the police present it for the purposes of Section 37 of the legislation. I have a few comments that I will save for summing up, but at that point, I'd invite you to ask any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Warren. I don't know if Mr. Burns or Mr. Moran would like to comment or add anything to your representation.
I'm happy for either of them to speak. The difficulty we have in the olden days where we were sitting at a desk, I could nudge someone under the desk to either make a point or be quiet. But in this case, I think it's probably best I ask both of them if they have anything they wish to add, probably briefly, but if that's okay.
Okay, yeah.
Nothing from myself at this point.
Okay,
I think Piers has covered everything there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're now ready to have questions on the applicant's presentation from the licensing officer, Helen.
It was just a quick one, if I may. It's more for Mr. Burns, if that's possible, and it was just more because I know Mr. Burns and how he operates, and you can probably tell from the footage that we've viewed as well. He's easily accessible, but it's more for the members. So my question is, Mr. Burns, can you just outline how you go about managing these premises in terms of what I'm trying to say is, for example, your DPS at 4 at the moment, and if you were granted today the 5th, how would you do you kind of stick to one premises and then maybe go around the premises each hour, or do you kind of stick to a premises and then if there's any issues with any premises, do you then go to those? It was just kind of, how do you kind of manage the premises, or do you leave it to your managers and then if there's any issues they give you a call and you come down? Just kind of that information if you can.
Thank you, Helen. Yes, we do know each other and we've worked together for years. I appoint a manager for the bar. I make certain that they're suitably trained, and where I can, we will put a personal license in their name. I work on the confidence basis that these are senior guys that have been around the industry a while, and I allow them to manage the premises to comply with all the licensing objectives. If I'm needed to stiffen that up, then I will go. I tend to be at the Monk a lot because it's the latest bar, it's the busiest bar, and it certainly has opportunity for conflict more than the others at the moment. Bear in mind, each site is supported with door staff. There are door staff on every single one, and they all comply with all of the rules that I ask them to do so. So I do travel around them, I do put my nose in them, and I make certain that the staff, and most importantly the manager, I don't just leave it in the hands of new staff, young girls. That isn't the way. Aaron is an area manager, but underneath Aaron we have people in each bar that are actually managing. Claire at Finnegan's, Catherine at Kennedy's. So there are managers, Helen, at them, and I support them and train and hopefully bring them forward. Ultimately, they'll move on, and I hope to think that they're going to move on with great training.
Thank you, Christian, and thank you, Chair. That's all from me.
Okay, thank you. So questions from the police? Have we any questions?
Yes, hi, it's Sergeant Dickinson here. I'm going to do the questions on behalf of the police, if that's okay.
Okay.
Just in the presentation, the solicitor made reference to the proximity of the premises. Can I just ask, have you actually visited the premises to see how near they are to each other?
No, I haven't. Sorry, I turned myself off. As you may have heard, I'm based in Bristol, so I haven't. But I did speak, obviously, to Christian and to Jason about this, and asked them how far it was to get down the road, and that was their assessment, not mine.
Right, I thought that might have been the case. It's just for reference. When we actually looked at the distance on the route planner, it's actually an 11-minute walk. It's half a mile between, so that is what we meant by the close proximity. It's not 2 minutes away.
I may let Christian or Jason just address that if they have anything to add.
Yeah, please.
It clearly could be on an 11-minute slow walk, Catherine, but certainly it's a 2-minute drive. My car, as you know, is always parked outside of the Monk, and it would be within Morrison's car park within a minute. So the distance between the two sites are not, as far as I'm concerned, unmanageable.
Right, okay. And this one is for Mr. Burns. You said about the closure notice that it was cancelled. Do you have any paperwork referring to that?
I've got the rescinded notice that was issued to me by DCC, and I can email that across to you all later. But yes, it did.
Just in relation to that rescinded notice, is that actually now saying that they've done a check and that they're confident that it is COVID compliant?
The notice was actually issued to me saying that we'd spoken, and between us we'd actually realised that the GDPR aspect of it could be covered off, and that was the reason for it. Everything else was okay.
All right, just again for the committee, I spoke to the officer who issued the closure notice yesterday, and he said it's never been rescinded. What actually happens is they do an inspection, and if they are happy that all the points are met, then they could open again in the 7 days.
Okay, well, we can note that as a committee. Thank you, Sergeant.
it may be that that's slightly sort of semantics anyway in terms of where they were with closure and things like that. So I think it's more to the point that actually the discussions were had, and then, as I say, the notice doesn't deal with crime and disorder anyway. So that's why I made the point about the notice earlier. I mean, it's good to clear it up, but like all these things, they're different terminology, and I think it's difficult for everyone to understand what's revoked, what's withdrawn, what's closed off, what's been signed off, etc.
Oh yes, fully agree. I just wanted the committee to understand it wasn't actually ever cancelled. The notice was issued and it went through the process, so that notice still does stand. There's nothing further from myself, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have we any questions from members?
None from me.
None from me, Chair.
Okay, I have nothing in RTS, so that goes to our legal officer. Have you any questions or comments, Stephen?
Can you just bear with me one moment, Chair? I need to, obviously I usually left with the mopping up exercise. If there's any gaps in what we've heard.
Sorry, may I ask, while you're just thinking about it, I go and wave my hands and turn the light on briefly? Sorry.
Absolutely, of course.
We're on.
Yeah, I think actually there is one specific thing that I don't think has been covered, and that was the issue over the CCTV footage that the police say they were never presented with on the 17th of October. And I know in your preliminary representation there you said that Mr. Burns has complied. You know, obviously that's one sort of disparity there. What happened with the CCTV footage from the 17th of October?
I'll let Christian deal with that, if I may.
It was a request that was made, not at the time, but later, but the action was taken by the council to put that closure notice on. When I went and looked at the CCTV, it wasn't there. It just had fallen off by the time that I'd actually got to burn it. So it was a new system. But my understanding was the CCTV footage was not needed because the actions had been taken by the council. So I just, again, under these conditions, it was something I didn't think was needed because it was a request and they'd already took the actions. So that was why it wasn't done. It wasn't done out of malice. And indeed, as Ian knows, every time CCTV footage is requested from my other site, it's provided to help get a case against individuals. This one, I believed, had been dealt with and had been signed off with the closure notice. So I didn't think the CCTV footage was either A, needed, or B, required.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Burns.
Just bear with me 1 second, Chair. I think everything has been covered by other people's questions, if I'm honest with you. One pass to Mr. Warren. Obviously, the council's statement of licensing policy states.
Sorry. Can I? For some reason, I've just got a dial tone that's. I don't know quite what's happened here.
Oh, right. Can you hear me now?
Bear with me. So, I'm really sorry. I just seem to have a dial tone, so I can only just about hear you. Let me see if it's because something else has opened up.
That's fine.
Technology and me.
Well, it's technology and everybody. It's just where we are at the moment.
Now I've got some horrible beeping. I don't know if you can hear that. That's
No,
my
no.
ear.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, it seems to have gone.
All right. Well, okay.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's just one point to address, and it may be that you're going to address it in the summing up. I don't know. Obviously, the council's own statement of licensing policy states, as such, it is expected that normally the DPS would be present at the licensed premises most of the time. How do you address that on a practical level? Is what I was going to say to you.
It's again, I mean, obviously policy and well, we've got to look at it at 3 levels. We've got the Licensing Act itself, which, as I say, is and as you know, Stephen, is fairly blank in all this. We then have guidance and policy, and as you know, the way the Licensing Act says is guidance first, policy to follow. You can go against guidance, but there has to be good reason to do so. I would say that actually, like all these things, they're designed to be flexed and flexible in individual circumstances. So if we look at the reality about what the role of DPS is as an overarching supervisor of the premises and indeed the management of the premises, whilst it is good practice, and I fully understand, and I read your policy paragraphs on it which talk about recommendations and good practice, they are, you know, without wishing to denigrate them, recommendations and good practice that have to fit obviously into the scenarios of each individual operation and the time in which they're operating. So yes, as you've heard, Mr. Burns sort of, if you like, stations himself at the busiest premises. It is in very near proximity to others, and as you heard from PC Robertson, he didn't have any issues with the other DPSs coming on. And so in terms of actually managing them, there is no great shakes in terms of getting there. And as you have heard from us, I would say, and I was going to put this in summing up, so I'll make sure I don't say it twice. Good practice goes much further, I would suggest, than simply having the letters DPS after your name in any given role at a premises. And when you take into account the training of staff, the other personal license holders, the clear oversight that he has, the fact that he makes himself available to all the officers, 45 visits with only 2 allegations of anything coming close to breaches of COVID regulations, nothing before you on crime and disorder to suggest that he can't manage these premises. I would say that all of that taken into account has to weigh against what you would consider good practice and recommendations in these circumstances.
Okay, thank you very much,
thank you,
Mr. Warren. I think the councillor has a question there, Chair.
I think so. I know we've passed questions from members, but we can go back for Councillor Hopgood.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. It's just to pick up on something that Stephen said, and it's around. I'm looking at page 5 of the third bundle that we received, and it's paragraph 16 that says it is Mr. Burns' intention, once he is satisfied that his managers has demonstrated they are competent and capable of running the premises to his exacting standards, to have them take on the role of DPS at the site they manage. Can I just ask how long that generally takes, given that he would have 5 in one go? How quickly in the past has he handed over the DPS on each premises, please?
Christian, I think this is probably for you, not me.
Yeah, by all means, more than happy to answer that. It's a question of how long is a piece of string. I identify individuals to come and join the business, put them in role, and sometimes they don't stay. They move on, they get better offers, or indeed the COVID summer that we've just had has seen an awful lot of issues with staff movement. So until we can get some kind of stability and we can get some kind of understanding of who's going to be where, it's difficult. Once we're out of this, and this summer, if you asked me the question in June of this year, I could probably give you more clarification. It should normally only take about 3 months. I want to see them attend the pub watch meetings. I want to see them apply all of the procedures that we've put in place. There's also managing the sites as well, so and that is about how they handle their staff and how they authorise the bits and pieces, and indeed customer feedback. But we've had the summer of COVID, and it's been an absolutely stressful time for everybody. We lost a couple of people. A couple of guys couldn't handle the new working practices and decided the industry wasn't for them. I'd earmarked 2 of them, so they've gone on. So the short answer is, it's difficult, but I would expect the process to be no more than 3 months in normal times.
Okay, thank you for that. Is all right? Okay for you, Councillor?
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
Okay, so now it's our final chance to address the committee. So, licensing officer, do you want to add anything to your report?
Nothing, Chair, just obviously the options available. I'll just go through them again. Is either to grant the application or to reject the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Police, have you anything to add on a summing up?
Yeah, it's PC Robertson here. Just to reiterate, I think our main concerns related to Mr. Burns being kind of, this control being diluted or stretched, in other words, sort of thing, over 5 sites. It is of concern. There has been 2 instances where he's been tested, and obviously there's been issues that's come to ourselves, and hence why we're here today. And that's about it from us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Warren, it's your opportunity now to finally address the committee before we go into our deliberations.
Thank you, Chair. And look, I think we all understand this is a strange and difficult time for everyone. You've heard from Mr. Burns about the measures he puts in place. You've heard that this is a temporary measure that he would expect or anticipate in ordinary times would take somewhere around 3 months. In COVID times, I think it's difficult to say for the very reasons he's identified. One could be finding oneself having to curfew everyone. One could find themselves with people just leaving because they can't cope with the testing times, which means at that point he would have to put himself back on anyway until he found someone else. So the reality is actually this is a robust move by a robust manager who intends to take control himself and manage what is a very difficult time and difficult process. The reality is that over the years, Mr. Burns has worked very well with the officers. And barring the one aberration, as you've seen it, has and can provide and has provided compelling evidence of having done so. The fact that there are 45 visits that are not all being put before you as examples of you know someone who doesn't take to authority is compelling evidence that is not the case, and that's not the way that Mr. Burns works in ordinary circumstances. The law is silent as to what you can do as a in terms of DPS, the role, what it's meant to do. The guidance is very clear in stating 2 or more. It doesn't set any limits, and indeed it makes it very clear that the purpose is to have a single point of contact for officers to come to, and indeed as you all know, the officers do know Mr. Burns and would certainly be able to approach him, and we would advise they do, or come to Punch obviously if there are any issues. We as a well, not we, I'm a solicitor external, but working for Punch for 9 years, I can't help myself occasionally saying we. Punch take these responsibilities very seriously. As a rule of thumb within Punch, we like people to be DPSs on fewer sites, but in speaking to Mr. Burns, we have assured ourselves that this is the right option at this time to do this on the basis of all the reasons that I've set out before you. So where your policy says, as it does, that DPSs can be on more than one site, 2 or more sites, it says, again, not setting a limit, one has to ask oneself what is the harm here, and the only harm one can look at is the undermining of the crime and disorder licensing objective. There is no evidence put before you, and it was compelling evidence from your question, I think, Chair, or one of your councillors. There was no trouble relating to the King's Head that could be pointed at that would demonstrate that this pub needs any further extraordinary circumstances for its management than those that have been put in place here. And if we look back at the example that was given in the guidance, someone who was on the verge of losing a personal license but kept it by the skin of their teeth, and then going into a premises where there were troubles that were directly associated with the reasons why he was prosecuted. We're nowhere near that standard of exceptional. So the reality is, I think, this is, if you like, the one time you do get to do this, safe in the knowledge that it's the correct decision for the promotion of the licensing objectives, which is what we're here to do at this time. With that, I'll leave it there. Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Warren. Our solicitor, Stephen, have you any final comments?
Nothing out of the ordinary, just obviously to remind the whole of the committee that the 3 that you decide are going to make the deliberations. You've heard from all of the relevant parties now. You need to deliberate regarding the evidence, your decision, the reasons for your decision. You have the substantial written representations. You've heard the verbal evidence of the police and from the applicant. You need to attach the appropriate weight to each representation and indeed the footage that you've seen. I will be available to give you legal advice regarding your decision, but ultimately you need to set your minds to the question, will this appointment undermine the crime prevention objective? You have to make your considerations in private, but you have to have due consideration to obviously the council's statement of licence policy and the section 182 guidance and the legislation, as Mr. Warren has pointed out. Thank you everyone for your patience taking part in today's hearing. I know it's testing, especially with the video footage and everything, but now it's simply a matter of the subcommittee going away and deliberating. Everyone will be notified later today or perhaps tomorrow, given the time, and a written decision notice will follow within the statutory time frame. If you just make it clear, Chair, which 3 councillors are going to make the delivery.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stephen. We have Councillor Hopgood and Councillor Hampson are going to join me in deliberation. So we're now going to retire and privately consider the representations of all parties. As Stephen said, the parties will be notified of the decision by the licensing officer later today. Item 5, any other business? I've not been notified of any other business, but before the broadcast ends, I'd like to thank those members of the public and the media who have watched this meeting. If you wish to find out the decision, email licensing@durham.gov.uk. The address can also be found on our website. Can I thank officers and members for their support today as well? Thank you.
Chair, can I add one thank you to Helen for her sterling work managing to get some videos up for us to see and hear.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.